So Joe and I are going to talk to y'all today about imagery and utilizing it in more of a mental practice scenario. So what we're going to do is kind of explain what imagery is and then break it down piece by piece and work it more into mental practice. This can be applied to all sports, so like football, basketball, baseball, softball, but today we're mostly going to be talking about it in a weightlifting or training kind of realm. First thing we'll talk about is a polysensory experience. Basically what that means is that we're going to break it down. You want to use all of your senses. So we're talking about your sense of smell, your sense of taste, tactile, kinesthetic, all of that breaking down, and learning to include that with our general kind of breakdown of practice and how we're approaching everything every day. The other thing we're going to talk about is being as realistic as possible. So you're going to make sure that you're vivid in all of your breakdowns, that you're executing good clarity. Research has shown that the more vivid or the more clear that we can make an image, that the better off you're going to be as far as your application of imagery, and the more applicable that the imagery is going to be to your actual practice. So what does that look like? Say I'm thinking about approaching a barbell, I'm going to make sure that I'm thinking about what it feels like to actually hold the bar in my hand. I'm going to think about what it feels like to rub the chalk in between my fingers. I'm going to think about my breathing. I'm going to think about what it feels like to have those muscles engaged, what my sweat tastes like. That might sound like something that's really strange, but that's something that goes along with training that we don't necessarily think about.
Yeah, these are things that, like he just said, that typically don't really even, you think, okay, in the moment, that's fine, that's great, but these are things that you have to continue to practice outside of the weight room in order to really get good at them, to kind of have that mental connection to the behavior.
Part of it too, taking kind of outside the realm of weightlifting. You think about like a boxer or something like that, say that they were going to use vividness or clarity. They close their eyes and think about, okay, what is the temperature of the ring? What does my opponent look like? What time of day is it? What's my fatigue level? I'm trying to go through here to manage as many factors as possible. It sounds really daunting at first. It sounds like it's going to be a lot. It sounds like it's going to be really, really difficult. But as you start to work through it, it become more and more a force of habit, and you'll get more comfortable with what you're dealing with and how you're going to set things up based on your individual needs.
I mean, so to kind of draw another corollary there is like it's practice. It's another version of practice. So how do you pick up the bar? Think about how that happens. Let's look at another very common behavior that this is used with, and I would think that's public speaking. So how do you feel when you get up in front of that group of people? You're going to practice what you need to do to make that as successful as possible. Your heart starts to race, all these different things. You feel the sweat on your palms. That's you going through mental practice without even really recognizing that's what you're doing, prepping for that event.
There's another thing that you can do as well is when you start to look at anatomy and start to understand kind of the relationship between your cardiovascular system and your respiratory systems. You start to look at it, everything is interconnected. So as you're executing different levels of imagery or working on mental practice, you can start to manipulate your breath. So say you're going to walk up to a barbell and you're working on getting psyched up for 1 at a max of 10. It's good to escalate your breath, bring your breath up, work on powerfully moving air in and out of your body. In situations like Joe was talking about, where you start to get super stressed out, you're freaked out about public speaking, it might help to use breath to bring everything down. So understanding that relationship is very vital in ensuring success both in the gym and outside of it.
Do you have any clients that use like the breathing technique like that?
I use it with everybody. I use it myself, all the time, 24 hours a day.
Is it hard to get them to kind of buy in on that?
The initial buy-in is usually much more difficult, and I'm gonna hate on guys for a second, way more difficult with dudes than it is with chicks.
Makes sense though.
It's the ego. We don't want to look stupid, and you're sitting there like huffing and puffing and doing stuff like that. It almost brings it back to, I feel like, meditation. That's definitely a difficult thing. But as most things, once athletes start to understand like the benefits of it, they're all about it.
Yeah. What's the first thing that people start to notice when they start to use that technique and really like commit to it versus doing it like one time, like, okay, that was fine. But once they actually start to use it continuously, what's the first thing that they kind of notice?
I think the biggest thing, you'll notice at the beginning, but you'll start to notice it as time goes on, as you become more self-aware. It gives you a feeling of control. Things are no longer happening to you. You are in control of your environment. You're in control. We try to play with as coaches and as trainers and as athletes that are riding our own program. There's so many different variables of looking at, well, what's my relative intensity? What's the weight on the bar? What is all this thing? That's fine, and it's important to make sure all those things are 100% dialed in, but at the end of the day, the variable is you.
Yeah.
So if you can control what's going on with you, if you can control your emotions, you control your rest, you control how you're approaching things, your emotional state, you're taking up 70 or 80% of the what could go wrong kind of out of the scenario.
The whole controlled chaos.
Yeah. Well, we're getting rid of the human component at that point by being in control of ourselves.
Yeah. So, calm violence.
Yeah, absolutely. That's what we're doing. Not to get overly science, but we're going to talk about kind of the neuromuscular hypothesis. I know y'all can't see that, but that's mostly just for us to kind of keep in mind where we have our thoughts controlled. So we're going to talk about some stuff that is counter to a lot of ex-phys background, but is actually emerging more now with behavior research. So part of it is neural mapping. So what we're going to use, like, we're going through imagery. I have my eyes closed, I'm working through everything, working through my rep. I'm expecting how I want it to feel. I'm not actually moving, I'm not actually doing any of these things. And that's part of the reason that mental practice is so convenient when we start to break it down. What we're doing with the neural mapping is I can sit down, I can think about a movement like the deadlift, I can think about a movement like the squat, and I can work through my approach, I can work through my setup, I can refine all of those things. I can work on stepping back from the bar, or I can work on getting tight with my deadlift when I'm going ahead to approach it. Then I can work on the actual movement, but you can actually work on disengaging the movement. I can work on dropping the deadlift. The benefit of imagery is that I can sit down and isolate whatever specific section that I want. Neural mapping starts to play into that to where I'm smoothing out my neural stimuli. So when my body goes to achieve that, it's a learned stimulus. So it's something that I can get better at over time, so I can very quickly move from novice to intermediate to an advanced or level of mastery.
So with that, that's actually what I was thinking. With a beginner, this is not something that you would reinforce, right? Or would you?
Absolutely. Anybody can benefit from imagery. But
Just thinking my own experience, like these are things that I would naturally do without someone saying, hey, you need to practice this. You know, because I felt like walking up to the bar, I would have a better performance if I thought about what needed to happen to get tight, let's say the deadlift, how I needed to breathe, how I needed to grip the bar, you know, exactly which hand was going to go where, if I was doing alt or double overhand. Those things I just naturally did as I got more and more comfortable with that movement.
But imagine how much more you could have achieved if you were working on that mental side of things from the get-go. A lot of people think about it and they're like, well, I don't want to overwhelm myself. I get that, that's fine. But research has shown, if you think about it, kind of take yourself out of the equation at that point to look at it, you'll benefit more from mental practice with physical practice than you will with physical practice or mental practice. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
So you start to break it down and look at it, and it's like, well, if I can think about deadlifting and I can accumulate repetitions outside of the gym and break it all down, so when I come up and I approach it, I'm not overloading my system. Because you know as well as I do with a coach, if I have an athlete and I'm like, here are 5 things I want you to do, they'll maybe remember one of them. Versus if I'm like, here are 5 things that I want you to do, we can break it down piece by piece by piece using mental practice at that point. They're good, they're fine at that point. Because they've already gone and hit that 100 times, 1,000 times before they ever approach or touch a bar.
So, in the perspective of a beginner, how would you start that conversation as far as like, okay, let's say that's me. I'm unfamiliar with X movement, but you also want to throw in this imagery piece and the whole polysensory, you know, adaptation to that behavior, whatever, however you want to word it. How would you approach them, like first, you know, the initial conversation? Or if you're talking to a beginner, how, like, what would you tell them as like recommendation so far? Like, they're not getting the coaching experience from you every day. What would be the first thing that, hey, try this to get it started?
Pick a movement.
Just go with deadlift.
Okay, deadlift. So I would sit down and I'd ask them to focus on what is going right. So we always want to put a positive spin on stuff, especially with our culture and things that we have right now. Everything is so nitty-gritty and let's focus on the negative and you get X, Y, and Z wrong and all that stuff. And it's difficult as coaches because we kind of focus on that too. It's like, oh, you did this wrong, you're weak here, and we need to fix that. I'm like, that's it. But you might have done 9 things correctly and 1 thing wrong, and it just falls apart. So we're going to focus on what did you do well. So was your setup really good? Was your breathing right? Did you attack the bar? Did you have that calm aggression when you set up? So let's focus on that. What did you do well? Okay. Then let's sit down and let's focus on what did you do not so well. Not what did you do bad, what was negative about it. What did you do not so well? Where are areas that we can improve? So part of that is kind of having self-awareness. And pick on guys again. We, a lot of times, would rather put a square through a circle hole, kind of break it all down and jam things into place and figure it out. I'm guilty of doing it, Joe's guilty of doing it. That's how it goes. Patience is key with that. So what I would tell them to do is sit down, isolate whatever areas that they're not doing so well. From a real world practicality point, I would want to rehearse things that I'm doing well as much as things that I'm not doing so well. So I could break down and look at it and kind of understand, okay, this is what this should look like, this is what this should feel like, and break it all down. For an imagery standpoint, I would just focus on big cues. So utilizing all my senses. Am I approaching the bar correctly? Yes, check. Am I setting up correctly? Yes, check. And break it all down. As things start to become more advanced, you can add in greater clarity, greater vividness. You're never going to hurt yourself as long as you're doing this stuff well. By hurt, I mean you're never going to negatively impact your performance. So imagery is good for beginners, it's good for moderate, it's good for advanced individuals. And there's no level of imagery where you could do it, say hypothetically, too often. You could sit there and hammer it 200 times a day if you wanted to. You could do it 10 times a day. It's not anything that you're going to accumulate fatigue. So that's something that's really beneficial about it.
So not even any kind of psychological fatigue.
No, and that's the beauty of it, is because a lot of things like what we're talking about are deemed power sports or power disciplines, where you're looking at it, to where I can only get so much.
Yeah.
My nervous system, my body, my joints, they're only going to take so much at a time.
So, I mean, the reason I'm asking that is because the clients that I work with, I don't specifically tell them to use imagery. I mean, I do it on my own just because I thought that was like the natural progression.
Yeah.
The more experience you get, that's just something that you do. And you hear cues like, okay, now those cues are in my head, and I'm constantly focusing on those things. But with that said, spend too much time because we have kind of the next window. But you were talking about reps.
Oh yeah.
Kind of break down, what it takes to become successful with that.
So we talk about mental practice with the deadlift. Let's say like a normal program would be 5x5. So the movement like the deadlift, you only want to hit that like once every 7 to 10 days, right? So your window is inherently short. In calendar year, we're talking realistically, if you were a determined individual and you just got after it, we're talking about 50 weeks hypothetically that you have, right? So if we did 5x5, which is a total accumulation of working sets of 25 reps, okay, so we got 25 reps per week. We did that 50 weeks out of the year, which is not a realistic number.
If you work with John, you'll never do 5x5.
We'll never do 5x5, but we'll break it down. So you 5x5, 25 reps per week, okay? So we're talking a 7-10 day window, 50 weeks, because we're gonna take a week off for Thanksgiving, week off for Christmas, whatever you gotta do, okay? So we're gonna set that aside. We're only getting approximately 1,250 reps a year, okay? So that sounds like a lot, all right? Now, if we add in mental practice into the mix, okay? So this is without doing any physical reps. This is just doing mental practice. We did 10 reps of mental practice, which you could knock out in literally 3 minutes. You do that sitting in class, riding in the elevator, laying in bed at night, driving down the highway. Don't recommend that, but you can knock it out. Work through all that and visualize what you want to do. Visualize what you want to experience. Visualize how you want the movement to break down, things like that. You're looking at an increased number of 3,640 reps per year, okay? So that's 2.9 times the amount of reps that you would add under a perfect scenario if you did 5x5 for 50 weeks out of the year. Now, think about that. What could you achieve if you did both? So you're getting the mental practice and the physical practice. There's a saying, there's no scientific evidence to back it up. There's 10,000 reps to mastery, okay? So if you could accumulate 10,000 reps as fast as possible, you're eventually going to become a master of your craft. When you think about it, you break it down, well, if I can accumulate almost 5,000 reps or 4,500 reps over the course of a year, well, I can achieve mastery status in as little as 2.5 years. Now, mental practice, that's only doing 10 reps. You could do 20 reps, 50 reps, 75 reps, and knock it out. Now, the more vivid and the more clarity, not to harp on it, but the more that you can hammer that, the more that you can include all the senses, the more realistic you can make that experience at that point, the better off you're going to be.
Yeah, so if you're telling someone how to do that, you start them off with pay attention to this, now pay attention to this plus this, now this plus this plus this. And that experience just gets more and more vivid for them and more beneficial, really, I would assume.
You want to do the limit exercise?
you walk it
Put you on the spot. All right, so Joe, close your eyes, be in a very relaxed state. So relax your arms, relax your body. We're gonna let everything chill out, okay? So what I want you to imagine, y'all can do this at home if you're watching this video. What I want you to imagine is that you are at home in a kitchen. Make it a kitchen you're super familiar with, okay? I want you to walk into that kitchen and you're gonna pick up a lemon. I want you to think about what the lemon feels like. What color is the lemon? Is it warm? Is it cold? What does it feel like in your hand? Is it dimpled? Is it smooth? After you do that, once you set the lemon down on the counter, once you pull out a knife and you're gonna cut the lemon, okay? So I want you to think about all your experience using all of your senses here. What does the lemon smell like? What does it taste like? What does the air feel like? things like that, okay? Now I want you to take the lemon that we've cut, all right? You're gonna pick it up, bring it to your mouth, and you're gonna bite into it, all right? Take note if you feel the experience here, kind of mentally walk that away. Literally salivating. Yeah. So the better off your imagery experience is that you start to break that down. Are you experiencing salivation when you think about the lemon? Do your cheeks pucker a little bit? That was something that caught me off guard the first time that I did this. I was thinking about the lemon, I bit into it, and not only did you get a saliva response, but your cheeks pucker back because you're thinking about what that lemon feels like. You're thinking about what that experience is.
I didn't get the pucker, but I definitely got salvation.
So your next stage of self-awareness would be like, can I get the pucker? Because then you're getting a muscular reaction to a stimuli.
Yeah.
So if you can break something like that, to where that's something simple. I don't care if you've touched a barbell or anything. Everybody knows what a lemon's like.
Yeah.
So if you can apply imagery to that scenario and then turn around and apply it grand schemes of lifting, it's like, well, what can I actually achieve at this point? One of the key things to take away as well, because we always want to bring things back to scientifically based literature. Imagery has actually been shown in certain motor behavior studies to where you can actually achieve hypertrophy, which is like mind-blowing. I'm still trying to like wrap my head around
I
all
still
that.
don't believe this.
Yeah, but it's out there, I promise you, because I struggled with it for an entire semester. When you look at it, if you can achieve good imagery, so you're getting optimal activation, you actually achieve all of the neural stimuli from the brain, nervous system, everything, in order to almost activate the muscles. Okay. Now I say almost activate the muscles because we're getting neural stimuli, but they're not breaking the thresholds where we're getting a full contraction at that point. Okay. If you can go through that over and over and over again, you're actually achieving small amounts of hypertrophy in addition to neural mapping that is going to help you on the platform. So this isn't just a mental exercise; it's very much so a physical exercise. So I want to bring that home because it's very important to kind of see things full circle.
Yeah, and it's interesting. So if you don't understand, like if you don't know all the pathways and how hypertrophy occurs, like really scientists don't even understand how it completely occurs. But if you know what's kind of out there as far as like stimulating growth hormone via muscle stretch, whatever else is out there, right? Just thinking about exercise makes you grow. That doesn't make any sense to me, but according to the evidence, if you think about it, it can optimize the situation as far as long-term results. So it's definitely something that should be included in more and more people's programming in their daily training regimens.
And if you feel like you don't know what you're doing, look up literature. We're more than happy to answer questions based on our independent experience. It's something we're constantly learning about, experimenting. I'm actively pursuing higher level education in this stuff because it is so intriguing. But we're more than happy to help out. There's also literature out there and other experts in the study. You can look at West Virginia, Florida State, the University of Tennessee, which is where I'm currently at right now. There's tons of literature out there, so we're more than happy to help.